Hello and welcome to Newsbreak Chats. I'm Shai Hoffelenia, the editor of Newsbreak. This is the investigative and in-depth section of Rappler. This is already our 7th episode under quarantine, and up to today, I think the numbers of coronavirus cases continue to rise. Today, we will be talking to three of our reporters. We will be chatting with Ralph Rivas, who is our business reporter. We'll be asking him about the impact of the pandemic on the Philippine economy. We also have Camille Elemia. Hi, Camille.
Hi.
Camille wrote an investigative story on PhilHealth and Philippine Red Cross. I don't think people were very happy with it. Some people were not happy. Others, of course, were thrilled that Camille was able to put this story together. And finally, we also have Sophia Tomacruz. Hi, Sophia.
Hi.
Sophia wrote a very comprehensive profile of our embattled Health Secretary, Francisco Duque. So welcome to Newsbreak Chats, ladies and gentlemen. Sige, let's start with Ralph, the only male guest that we have today. Ralph, could you give us a sense of how businesses are holding up? Because there's a lot of uncertainty. The president has said that there would be a virus, a vaccine rather, that we can expect, we can look forward to. Experts say, next year pa yan, June of next year, 2021, at the very, very earliest. So given that cloud of uncertainty, how is the economy holding up, you think?
Actually, during this third quarter, and third and fourth quarters, mas optimistic na in general yung businesses kasi most businesses have been allowed to reopen, and then we have Bayanihan 2. They're still banking on the fiscal stimulus packages and all the other plans about the economy. Pero so far yung nakikita natin, struggle talaga to go back up kasi yung expectations sa mga tao, V-shaped recovery, meaning, before the pandemic kasi mataas yung ekonomiya natin consistent tayo ng nasa 6-7% GDP. Then, tapos, everybody was expecting a V-shape na parang mabilis talaga yung pag-angat. But it's a mixed bag in different sectors. Siguro yung, maraming data points at this point, no? Pero yung isa sa mga talagang glaring are our malls. Kasi pag sinabi nating Metro Manila, for instance, sasabihin talaga niyan, malls like SM, Robinsons, Ayala, foot traffic is really bad even until now kahit pa open na sila. There are a lot of estimates na we're not gonna see mega malls na sobrang laki as compared before. Kasi experts are saying na liliit yung mga malls.
Yeah.
Kasi nga, because of the so-called new normal. Yung mga ganong adjustments are just some of the things na nakikita ng mga analysts and even the business community at this point.
I wonder though, you mentioned malls, no? Kasi nga, bare months na tayo. So dapat by this time, people are starting to shop already, nagsisimula ng mag-window shopping. But if you enter the big malls, malungkot di ba? The Christmas spirit is not quite there. And how are these small owners adjusting to this kind of a situation? Na talagang kung tumataas pa rin yung numbers ng coronavirus cases, medyo matatakot pa rin bumabad sa mall ng matagal, di ba? Maybe at the most 1 hour or 2 hours. So how are they shifting or making adjustments?
Well, ako, Ma'am Chay, nung weekend lang galing akong mall, nag-grocery ako. Medyo, alam mo yung parang feeling na parang kailangan come and go lang. Wala nang masyadong window shopping, parang yung ganong fear. Tapos, syempre kapag may nagkukumpulan ng mga tao. But I think that malls have remained optimistic, especially pagdating ng birth months. Kasi they're still banking on the Filipino culture na parang hindi pwedeng walang Pasko. Ganun yung mood. Especially kapag umattend ako ng mga stockholders meetings lately, although all have been virtual. Another thing that we're seeing is the shift to digital. Lots of malls teaming up with they're having their own mobile applications para doon ka nalang mag-shop. And then sabi nga ng mga stock analysts, parang yung drive-thru ngayon hindi na lang kape, pati appliances, damit. Yung parang ganun yung temporary na ano. But again, makes you question, no, na ano bang, is this gonna be the future? Parang ang lungkot naman, no? And what's gonna happen with all that land? Hindi naman pwedeng magiging mawawala ng value yun, di ba?
Curious lang ako, Camille and Sophia. Ano ang shopping behavior ninyo? Kasi nga sabi ni Ralph, for him, 1 hour lang, grocery, and then that's it. Kayong dalawa.
Well, ako, grocery lang. Tapos maraming online shopping. Pati, like, even with food, meron kasi dito sa community namin na parang lahat available. Merong separate Facebook group for food, merong Facebook group for home supply. So, lahat nandun na. Tapos, i-deliver na lang sa'yo. So, bihira na lang. I guess, inlabas ko na lang as for grocery kasi minsan mas mura pa rin if I go to the grocery for like some foods.
Same with Camille. Yeah, same with Camille no, Ma'am Chai. I rarely go out now to the mall to get anything. If ever, actually, I only went to the mall this weekend. It was just the first time in a few months. And same situation with Ralph din. As in, medyo malungkot na yung mga malls because whereas before, it's really so packed and crowded. There's that energy that a certain mall has. It now it's just very sad. You see all the shops, the storefronts are closed. The signs say welcome, but then everything is covered by all these things, and so it's jarring to see almost because you know how big of a mall culture that we have now in the Philippines. But then, like Camille, I rely on mostly online shopping now to get everything and anything that I need.
Yeah, but again, dito sa...
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, ma'am, yung comment ko lang talaga dyan sa online shopping, medyo na-addict din ako dyan in the first mga bandang April, May. Naglagay ako ng chandelier, yung mga ganong modifications.
Chandelier?
Yes, dito sa taas. Kaya medyo dilaw yung ilaw dito sa sala. So, yung ganong feeling, no? Actually, kaka-attend ko lang sa stockholders meeting ng Wilcon. And they said na yung main products nila are tiles. At saka yung mga usually hindi appliances tsaka yung mga ilaw eh. Pero ngayon they're seeing na since malaki yung spaces ng Wilcon, 'di ba? So parang in a way parang yung mga people were seeing the value of stores like Wilcon and other things, other spaces that you'd usually associate with hardware. So may mga ganun ding trends na parang it's not all just digital. But again, going back to online shopping, I think companies like Lazada, Shopee, and other online stores, if they're gonna try to be the next SM, medyo mahirap din eh. Kasi for instance, I have a bad experience. May mga defective na mga items. So tumigil rin ako. And yung return time nila to get the items back and refund me the cash, matagal. Halimbawa, yung isang chair na in-order ko, 3 months na, hindi pa rin na-refund. So again, you nakikita mo pa rin yung mga gaps in terms of the digital. Masyadong napabilis ng pandemic na to yung shift natin to digital, na to the point na the infrastructure and everybody else was caught off guard.
Pero do you see that as a trend? I mean, moving forward, no? Kasi kung yun na nga, meron pa ring uncertainty and looks like this will spill over to next year, half of next year even. So if mall owner ako or I own a business and I'm renting space in a mall na kukonti lang ang foot traffic, should I start shifting my mindset? Yun na nga, may difficulties din sa digital, no? But is that the better way? Are more people starting to consider that now as an option? Or ano pa rin, hoping pa rin na, you know, life will return to normal as what it was before the coronavirus?
Well, even before the pandemic, meron na talagang race to digital. Lots of companies have been pouring billions, especially yung mga big companies, to go digital. They've been acquiring small startups that have certain potential. For instance, digital payments, things like that. Pero ngayon talagang mas napa-accelerate. So, that's definitely a trajectory that we have anticipated. And more so now because of the pandemic. Pero at the same time, may ganun ding questions na parang what's gonna happen with all the land in Metro Manila? Will we see a depreciation of value? Or, yung mga ganun, parang yung mga big question marks na parang after this pandemic, will we see, bubble burst in terms of real estate? Diba?
Mm-hmm.
Kasi yung I mean, at this point, mahirap. Ano pang value nung malls, all that mall space, no? Kasi for instance, Ayala, some Ayala malls have been renting out their parking space to other companies. Kasi nga, para lang magkaroon ng konting revenue, di ba? Or some are converting their spaces to office space. Halimbawa, hotels, di ba? Yung mga ganung temporary ramifications just to get by.
How about yung mga blue chip companies, no? Like, di ba, medyo kung medium or small business owner ka, pag nakita mo the likes of Jollibee na nagsasara ang branches, or even San Miguel, for example, na nagre-register ng negative earnings, are these bad signs or temporary temporary hump?
At this point, well, syempre yung mga owners like Tony Tantak, they're very optimistic on what's gonna happen. Parang sabi nga nila, pre-pandemic levels daw by 2021 yung magiging earnings nila. San Miguel is also optimistic. Kahit pa nalulugi na sila, I mean, losses sila for this year. Sila yung may pinakamataas na COVID-19 response, 500 million, I think, in terms of value. So at this point, yung masasabi ko for that is the big companies, while they may be suffering, they have sufficient cash and have lots of ways to raise capital, like they can issue bonds. For instance, SM has recently got the nod from the Securities and Exchange Commission to raise at least 50 billion pesos. Kung para saan man, anong project ba yan, rumors before, like reclamation, di ba? Maraming ways for big companies to look for capital. Yung talagang issue ngayon are the small businesses. Kasi yung nakikita natin ngayon, banks have started to tighten up. Even though the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas has lowered the reserve requirement ratio, meaning yung kailangang hawakan ng na pera ng bangko at the end of the closing day. So kapag binawasan yung reserve requirement, ibig sabihin they have more cash na pwedeng ipautang. But they're not doing that. We were observing na mahirap kumuha ng credit card or magpataas ng credit limit. Yung mga ganon na parang banks are still a wait and see and still bracing for impact kahit pa third and fourth quarters na. And we started to reopen the economy.
Sige, we'll go back to you, Ralph, maybe for a bigger picture. But I want to shift muna to Sophia because I'm curious, no, about this man who is being blamed by so many sectors, senators, legislators, lawmakers, civil society. He's been described as incompetent. He's not good enough for the job. You did a profile about Secretary Duque. Please tell us a little more about him. Ano yung pinaka-interesting discoveries while you were doing research on Duque?
Right, naman, Chay. I think one thing that's a little bit shocking for Duque himself is that all of a sudden he's thrust into the spotlight because he's been this government official who's been in public service for decades now. And even if he's held top posts in many agencies, something that is unique to him, that he's held so many different top positions in so many different agencies, no, he hasn't really ever been in the spotlight the way that this pandemic has done for him. And one thing that really struck me when putting together the profile is that, you know, for all his experience in different agencies, majority of which were involved in health in some way, whether it be like in PhilHealth, which is an institution that he's been in for, I think, the longest in his career, or the fact that he's the first returning DOH chief. What really struck me was it wasn't his experience in these health-aligned institutions that have really influenced him. If anything, talking to people who have worked with him in various agencies, is that it was the position that former President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo gave him right before she stepped down, which was as Civil Service Commissioner Chief. And it struck me that that would be the position that would influence him the most, because if you think about the pandemic, it's the farthest thing that you would think would have impacted him as a leader. But then it reflects kasi in everything in his leadership style and the way that he has handled this pandemic, from him not being very attuned to all the details of, let's say, things like contact tracing, ramping up our testing capacity. I say that it all goes back to that because, you know, he has this view that each person, each government employee is responsible for themselves, and that, you know, he's just this person who is in a position to, I guess, put together all those things. And so when things don't work in harmony, let's say, he'll be like, wait, it's not my fault, it's your fault, because as a government official, I expect you to be competent enough at your job. And his 5 or 6 years in the CSC really shaped his thinking that way, because, you know, we all know that when you're CSC chair, that's the body of the government that really handles all these cases against government employees, whether it be like negligence or some other complaint. And so his view is really that, you know, you are responsible for your own self. It doesn't translate to him, or it doesn't occur to him that, you know, your employees also reflect on who you are as a secretary.
In other words, parang what he does, style niya, is he delegates, decentralized. Parang it's not me lang, but kayo, and then you're responsible and you're accountable. I am like on top of everything else.
Right.
You report to me, and I won't bother with the nitty-gritty or the details.
Mm-hmm.
Parang ganun ba siya?
Quite ministerial, yeah.
Yeah. And how would you assess him then as a leader? Parang of course we know, no, that despite all the controversies, the president still has trust in him. And do you think that he is the right person to head the DOH at this particular point in time, when the pandemic still has not been tamed and we are still number one sa ASEAN countries in terms of cases?
In terms of total numbers of cases. Well, I think when it comes to assessing him as a leader, if anything, this pandemic has shown that he's more of the reactive type, not so much proactive. He doesn't. I think that goes back also to, if you look at his experience, he has the credentials on paper, no, to, let's say, from the years of government service, from being in all these institutions that are related to our health system, and, you know, having a medical degree and background in all these medical fields. He has everything that you would expect of a top health official on paper. But then when you go to his experience, he's reactive more than proactive, because really what it comes down to is he's been in managerial positions. And so when it comes to the technical aspects of public health, let's say, like testing and treatment, and then being able to really institute all these responses at scale, which is what we know is very important in public health, that's not his strong suit anymore. And I can list you so many examples of when we saw this on display, and when he from remarks about not really understanding all the waves of the virus, let's say, to you know testing and everything. He doesn't understand those technical aspects, and so in the end you don't have a top health official who's very assertive about the necessary steps that need to be in place. I remember a few days ago, when the debate was still on about whether or not we should be reducing physical distancing in public transport, there was a moment when Duterte had his address that, he raised the position of health experts on that, and that they were against it. I cite that example because that moment was something that was a point where I thought that he might actually, for once, make a clear, categorical statement about, a public health measure. Physical distancing, we know that it's just like basically the minimum health standard instituted by the WHO. It's what the DOH said was their only ask. If you open the economy, the only thing we ask is that you follow these minimum health standards. I thought that he would finally make a categorical position about that. But then, what he did was he only said what the health workers' position was, and then he kind of took a step back and said, I'm telling you this so that you have this data available when you make the decision, and so that there was this possibility that they said around 600 cases could be added per day, but there's also other studies that say it's not that bad. So
parang si Anyo pa yung di ba? Mas categorical. Anyo was more deliberate. Kung akong tatanungin, no. Parang,
yeah, and he's one who was it was Anyo who was saying, we really need to be more consistent about the way that we institute and implement these measures, because you give up a little bit here and then all of a sudden everyone's going to ask if, hey, maybe we can reduce it in restaurants, maybe we can reduce it in malls. But that didn't come from the health secretary, that came from the interior secretary. And so I think it shows that he's not really willing to make decisions that upset people in power. He knows how to stick to the script, let's say, and he won't butt heads with anyone. And maybe this is also his way of avoiding responsibility for any possible mistake or any possible backlash that could be made from making a major decision like that.
I'm curious, Ralph. Ano yung sinasabi ng business sector about Duque or DOH for that matter?
Actually, not much on Duque, but the overall approach of government. Kasi for example, ito Fitch ratings. Ito yung talagang isa sa mga binabantayan ng Department of Finance and the economic managers. Kasi pre-pandemic, we were gunning for an A rating, meaning we've paid our debts, and with higher credit rating means a lower interest and we can borrow more from so alam mo yun, parang ina-guard to ng Department of Finance in particular, kasi I mean, with this space, we're not expecting na matatapos ito by the end of the year. May spill over to next year, di ba? So we need all that ammunition and parang credentials to borrow more. Pero yung sinasabi ng Fitch, and let me read, the government's record of macroeconomic management lends credibility to the projections, but curtailing pandemic-related spending may be difficult if the economy continues to contract and fails to recover as fast as the authorities expect. Indeed, if the recovery stalls, there may be pressure for even more fiscal stimulus. Ibig sabihin, kung hindi nyo ito maayos, baka, alam mo yun, alanganin na, and we may, hindi na nga gumagastos ng super laki yung government for the pandemic, di ba? And we may even need more cash to
Yeah. I don't know, ako lang ba, Camille, parang walang sense of urgency, di ba? Parang, okay, it's been like half a year, maybe we'll wait for another half a year for the vaccine. Okay pa naman ng economy. parang masyadong, I don't know, masyadong relaxed ba ang ating government officials? Na yun, halimbawa, no, in the story that Camille worked on, this was PhilHealth and Red Cross. Parang, okay, kailangan nating mag-mass testing. So, from the point of view of PhilHealth, walang institutional capability. So, sige, maghanap tayo. Sinong may capability? Red Cross. Sige, go. Let's have a contract with Red Cross. Parang, yun kasi yung convenient, di ba?
Parang actually, if you read the agreement, yung memorandum of agreement nila, parang lalabas na minadali siya in a way. While at that time, we needed mass testing. Pero if you look into the details of the contract, na parang the ways to liquidate the funds, and then pati yung pricing, kasi the pricing was pegged at 3,500 per PRC or Philippine Red Cross test. Pero later on, at that time kasi yung PhilHealth pegged it, I think, as Sophia mentioned, 8,000 plus, right? Tapos, naging after nun, edi na-implement na yung MOA. So now, 3,400 plus na lang per test. So, mas sobra pa yung binabayad sa PhilHealth, sa Philippine Red Cross. So, dun pa lang, it shows there's a lack of planning. Parang hindi masyadong binantayan how public funds are spent. So, yeah, ang hirap. Kasi, at one end, sinasabi nila, we don't have enough money. But when you see how they're not really looking after prudent spending of funds, parang akala ko ba wala tayong pera? But why are we doing this? Na, violating laws meant to protect public funds. So yun lang yung parang dissonance, discrepancy with what they're saying and what they're actually doing.
Is this a case of graft or is it a case of oversight?
Actually,
yeah, matino naman yung intent, which is to be able to test more Filipinos, kasi yun naman ang dapat na ginagawa talaga. It's part of the trying to control the pandemic. And Philippine Red Cross yung pinaka may capability So, madaliin na lang natin.
Pero parang like, whenever I talk to other PhilHealth insiders and even state auditors, parang nire-raise ko. Pero kasi at that time, it was really needed. But ang issue nila is, hindi naman porket kailangan, gano'n na lang papabayaan yung laws. And maybe that's the problem of our laws. But at the same time, 100 million yun. If it was like, alam mo yun, if it was like, kailangan, di sana, kasi ang Red Cross, Ma'am Chay, ang yaman yan. That's one thing I realized dito sa paggawa ng story ko, na Red Cross really has lots of money and they are not required to open their books except to submit, like under the charter of the Philippine Red Cross, they're just required to submit their lists of activities and expenses at some point to the Office of the President. So I asked former President Aquino nung time niya kung nababasa niya, sabi no, nade-delegate daw niya sa DSWD and DND. So ngayon, with President Duterte, we couldn't get an answer kung kaninong office na papasa. Pero it's not really a requirement. Parang, okay, submission lang. More of, lang siya, parang requirement lang. Pero hindi talaga yung, pag hindi mo napasa, na parang salin, hahabulin ka. So yun, na parang ang yaman ng Red Cross, or I think we should use na they have sources of funds, and at that time na nag-start yung mass testing, they already have lots of funding, pero bakit kailangan government pa rin yung sumalo nun? So that's really one problem that I see. And I think what really struck me was how easy it was to get away with it, because nasa US pa ako, nababalitaan ko na yung issue nung sa IRM and then the Red Cross. But of course, I couldn't focus since I'm not here. And then when I was doing this story, I watched previous Senate hearings and I noticed na I think it was May 20 when Senator Lacson brought up the issue. Pero yun nga, that was May. Until now, if we didn't do it, hindi siya lalabas or hindi man lang ma-raise na dapat hindi man lang ma-raise yung question if there was really irregularity in that kind of dealing. So I guess one part of that.
What exactly is IRM, interim reimbursement mechanism? How does it work? You get reimbursed or it's an advance payment actually?
Well, kasi actually, in the name it says reimbursement, pero usually, maybe Sophia can help me with this. Sa IRM, it depends on the historical claim of the hospital and they have to apply for that funds. Dito sa, itong kaibahan sa Red Cross. And the Red Cross, they didn't have to apply. They have a separate memorandum of agreement. And as mentioned by the former lawyer, fraud officer of PhilHealth who just resigned, si Attorney Keith, the admission of former VP for Legal Del Rosario in the House that the money spent for the Red Cross or the money given to Red Cross was not part of IRM is actually like worse because walang pinanghahawakan, walang basis as compared to if you have the IRM, there was like a board or a resolution with that. Because insiders tell me, walang approval ng board to. And I tried to confirm that with a board. But of course, they tried to delay us and did not, at the end of the day, they didn't give us the answer that we needed. So yeah, that's the situation.
So in the case of the Red Cross, it's not IRM, but maybe Sophia nga, could you just help us a little bit? How does it work for PhilHealth na totoong IRM?
Right, because the objective of the IRM is to really help hospitals be more liquid during the pandemic because, you know, you foresee a crisis that's coming. Your hospitals can't be cash strapped. Like they can't not have the ability to pay for patients' treatments. Otherwise, patients will die, you know, at the core of it. So you're dealing with people's lives here. So when you have the IRM, it's based on your previous year's reimbursements for a span of 3 months, 90 days, yeah, if I'm not mistaken. And that's supposed to help you kind of tide the quote unquote crisis. And you know, objectively, it makes sense in the way that, you know, you want your hospitals to be able to have the money to treat patients. But then, you know, of course, as we saw throughout many hearings, it wasn't necessarily equitable the way that they were distributing all the funds, nor did it make complete sense. Like, you know, it wasn't nuanced enough to cope with the reality of the pandemic. And so it's actually interesting what Camille said, that Red Cross wasn't even covered by the IRM because, you know, it just begs the question, like, so why were they given this certain deal to begin with? You know, why not, let's say, focus on, of course, you need Red Cross to help increase your testing capacity because at the beginning of the pandemic, we really had none. I remember in March when the pandemic was just declared, we had only one national lab doing all the tests for us.
Our ITM.
Yeah, our ITM. And then, you know, when it comes to the number of tests that were approved, 0 in the FDA because we didn't even have a permanent director general at the time. And so you see the need for Red Cross there. But at the same time, why give them that kind of deal outside existing you know, frameworks already, and then leave out, let's say, funding like that for hospitals that really needed it? And so just imagine the 100 million where that could have gone also.
Okay, I'll go back to Camille. Camille, yung isang controversy pa insofar as PhilHealth and Red Cross is concerned is, of course, the conflict of interest. No? Si Senator Dick Gordon, he's a senator. At the same time, he's the chairman and CEO of the Red Cross. Isn't that an obvious issue?
It should be actually an obvious issue eh. Pero, syempre, we tried to get Gordon's side several times, but he didn't reply to us. So, well, it's better to have PRC's side than none at all. So for PRC, they gave us a 17-page reply. And interestingly, like, tapos, I think I sent 5 to 6 questions focusing on, you know, the advance payments and the conflicts of interest. Pero at the end of the day, ang sinend nila, parang I think 6 pages were spent answering my questions, and then the 10 or 11 parang puno na ng pictures and like quotes praising Senator Gordon. Well, we're not discounting the fact na, di ba, tumutulong ang Red Cross. That's not the point of why we're doing the story. So what they said was, I think I specifically asked them for the conflict of interest. I asked them because you, Senator Gordon, investigated PhilHealth last year, so it's a conflict of interest. And interestingly, the reply of PhilHealth did not answer that specific question. All they mentioned was, how can it be a conflict of interest when Senator Gordon did not sit in the deliberations of the Department of Health or PhilHealth? And when I read that, I was like, really? That's your answer? Because we all know that budget deliberations don't end like on what's being publicized. We all know, like, di ba, yung mga insertions na ano nga yun, behind closed doors. So I was like, really? This is your answer to this? And I remember 2019, it was Senator Gordon who initiated like the initial probe into the mess in the PhilHealth. And until now, there's still no committee report. Well, he tried to publish it, or he tried to, initially say ano yung laman, pero hindi naman nagalit, pero it did not sit well with some senators kasi if you notice, yung sa kanya, he's blaming the regional vice president's group. And for some senators, it's not fair because they participated in the probe. So for PhilHealth insiders, they say, for them, they view the PhilHealth Red Cross deal as a bribe. Because if you see the draft committee report of Senator Gordon, it exonerated the management somehow. And Ricardo Morales and the COO was they were part of the deal. They signed the deal with Red Cross. And then yung mga kaaway nila, yung mga VP, yun yung naagrabyado or like na-malign in Gordon's draft report. So yun yung politics inside. And then, of course, he didn't answer that. And a day after we published, he answered sa DZBB reporter. And wala naman bagong sinabi. So when I heard his interview, I kind of felt, okay, we got it covered, everything dun sa story, because they couldn't answer anything else. They couldn't, alam mo yun, add something new. In fact, tahimik sila until now, except when Senator De Lima raised an issue, and dun lang nila ulit sinagot. But it's basically the same thing, rehashed answers, and it's really not, I don't know, it really doesn't stand any ground for me. And besides, if you're a public official, you have to be held to a higher standard, and part of your task is to minimize the how do I say it? You have to minimize the concept or parang yung belief that you are involved. Yeah, that you have conflicts of interest. Diba? Nasa batas yun. So I also don't get, like in your question earlier, you said, was it oversight? But come to think of it, Senator Gordon was a senator and he upvoted for the law. And of course, matindi naman ng staff work ng mga senators, so they know what they were signing up for. And then at the same time, he's a lawyer, and he actually likes to say he's a lawyer in debates on the floor and everything. So if you're a lawyer, you should also know these things, right? Like the state auditing code and the PhilHealth code and the Red Cross Charter. So yun lang. So parang nung sa mga sagot nila, while some of their answers actually answered our questions, it raised further questions on my part na hindi ko na rin naman masasagot because they won't reply to me anymore.
It's interesting though when you say that Red Cross by itself as an agency has a lot of money, has a lot of resources. And yet I remember in your story, you said that Red Cross, according to the Red Cross, sila yung naagrabyado because they had the gadgets, the equipment, and they needed money and delayed pa nga yung bayad ng PhilHealth sa kanila. Therefore, they are at a disadvantage, and this is actually part of, I guess, public service.
Yeah, pero mali yun eh. Kasi like I also wrote in the story, if we go by the actual laws and not yung questionable MOA, talaga namang dapat magbayad muna sila. And I remember, napaka-sensitive ng Red Cross when it comes to allegations of corruption or misuse of public funds. Kasi, syempre, they have to answer also to the International Red Cross. I just remember this because at the time ng pag-aaway ni Senator Trillanes and Senator Gordon over extrajudicial killings investigation, I think Senator Trillanes raised an issue, a PCIJ report years ago about how Senator Gordon allegedly funneled funds, PDAF funds to Red Cross. So doon, nagalit talaga si Gordon, as in lalo siyang sumisigaw because that was really something, alam mo yun, madedehado siya kasi may international audience din siya eh. Pero that's really one thing too na na-realize ko sa story nito. I was actually messaging Ralph na, grabe, ang dami palang, parang yung Red Cross, they get a lot of funds. Like if you go to their website, syempre, una doon, like volunteer money and all that. Pero there's no way to really check on that because yung charter din nila, parang tricky. Kasi while they are a private company, they are attached like an auxiliary part of the government na parang katulong pa rin sila when it comes to humanitarian organizations. So, and they were created because as part of the Geneva Convention. So, ang hirap. And I remember talking to auditors and they referred me to a jurisprudence like a decade ago. At that time kasi, I think 2004 or 2005, at that time, parang may nagreklamo kasi Senator Gordon daw was a senator when he became, or when parang he used Red Cross or no, I think it was Senator Gordon became a senator after maging Red Cross official. So the court eventually ruled na hindi exactly public, hindi exactly private yung Red Cross, sui generis. So parang nung nabasa ko yun, ano na, parang there's no way to really check on what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting lang. Siguro just to put things in perspective again, we devoted a lot of time to this story because it's 100 million pesos that's involved. And this is advance payment to the Philippine Red Cross. I don't know what the standards are for liquidation. If very stringent ba yung requirements for documents to be submitted, I don't know. And even the president, I think, also said that advance payments are not allowed by the law. I remember hearing that very categorical si President Duterte about that. So I don't know how PhilHealth will be able to justify this contract with the Philippine Red Cross is no less than the president, who is also a lawyer, is saying this, di ba?
Yeah.
Okay, so anong impact nito sa atin? Why should we care? Why should ordinary people care? Hindi ba to away lang ni Gordon and the lawmakers and the auditors? Are we making too much of a big thing out of it?
Well, first of all, because it's the pandemic. And as I said, they kept on saying we don't have the funds for it and we can't test everyone. But we see them spending public funds as if it's their own money. Na walang, syempre pag tayo pera natin, di ba, parang mapapaisip ka, bakit ganito ko gagastusin? Or things like that. Pero it was so easy for them to just throw away, for lack of better term, the 100 million. And Red Cross was saying it was just once na may advance. But hindi yun eh. Kasi nga, even if once lang yung advance sa kanila, they kept on egging PhilHealth to give them the funds. Eh hindi lang naman sila yung healthcare facilities na kailangan din bigyan ng Red Cross, ng PhilHealth, because there's also the IRM. And also, I think another issue for me is, I think I told this to Sophia before in one of her chats, but it's about, this raises the question if really PhilHealth can take on the role of implementing the universal healthcare, because we have that grand dream, everyone will have insurance. It's so nice on paper, but with what's happening, and to be fair, this is not like just the first time that PhilHealth is involved in this. It's a very problematic agency. It's a very political, inside politics is affecting how they govern and how they service the people. So paano pa pag UHC? And ang dami-daming pera with the UHC implementation, right, Sophie?
Yeah, and their budget grows bigger every year with that law. And
what would your secretary say to this? I mean, this is PhilHealth. This is, or sabi niya, no, it's not my responsibility.
I think that's exactly what he'll say, no, Ma'am Chayasen, because he's quote unquote chairman of the board, and he's not involved in the day-to-day decision making. He doesn't sign any paper, and so that wouldn't be his foremost concern, definitely, if we're talking about the UHC, which is, I think, even when I used to really cover health, when you say universal healthcare, the first agency that comes to mind says Department of Health, because parang health, universal healthcare, and so but then universal healthcare, more than public health, let's say like immunization and things like that, it really is about financing. which is why PhilHealth will be the main agency that implements that. And so I don't know if that reasoning can still hold later on. Na I'm only the chairman. It's not my job to really look after all the details that go into implementing that, because it's universal healthcare, and money aside, it's people's lives that are at stake and are being affected by such a massive program.
It's just so convenient for him to
Yeah,
say,
go ahead.
it's just so convenient for him to say na I'm just, hindi ako yung day-to-day operations. Parang you get all the benefits as a board member, you get all the salary, the perks of being a health secretary, but when it comes to, accountability, it's not me.
Yeah.
That's the best job. Joke.
Sige. Maybe this is my last question. No? Parang, given where we are right now, Ralph, how would you, again, looking at the economy, kasi health economy, talagang magkadugtong yan, no? How do we compare to our other ASEAN neighbors? Are we better? Are we worse off? Given these problems, na ganyan yung health secretary natin, ganito yung resources natin, medyo mabagal ang response natin. Will we survive this?
Ano ba? Actually, yung may ginawa din ako story, basing it on a study by the Asian Development Bank. Yung key takeaways nito, yung tiningnan kasi niya yung mga micro, small, and medium enterprises. And basically, yung sinasabi ng paper, matindi yung impact ng pandemic sa small businesses dito sa Pilipinas compared to the other countries like Laos, Indonesia, and Thailand. 70% of our MSMEs were forced to temporarily close, whereas others mga under mga 48 to 41% lang. Yung mga ganong observations na parang bakit hindi totally mas maraming nagsara dito sa Philippines as compared to other countries. Tapos mas marami yung nagsabi na mauubusan na sila ng pera in the next month. Yung mga yung mga ganong qualitative na yung mga ganong observations, no. So makes you think na parang ano bang ako hindi ko din maano kasi everybody was caught off guard, everybody has their politics din, pero I don't know, baka yung ibang countries found compromises, I don't know, dito sa atin parang mas na-aggravate pa yung divide. Alam mo yun, yung parang it's so frustrating na parang ako nung mga bandang April iniisip ko na parang okay, this is the moment that we all come together. It did not. Parang mas nag-away yung mga tao at nangyayari. And siguro yung isa ko bang observation na gusto ko lang i-include, no, mas yung when I cover business, no, parang yung mga businessmen, usually yung observations nila is magkahiwalay yung politics and business. But now, because of the pandemic, they're seeing na we're not so hiwalay after all. Na to the point na like Jaime Augusto Zubel de Ayala, I saw him attend a house hearing, diba? Yung mga ganon, just to say his insights about the economy. Parang you only see Jaza once a year. Now I saw him at least 3 or 4 times. Or si Ramon Ang donated at least 500 million yung San Miguel. So it makes you think na parang, alam mo yun, they're stepping it up din na parang, oh no, they're failing. So baka naman, alam mo yun, kailangan din nating mag-step up.
Mistake din kasi sila di ba?
Yeah.
Sige, final thoughts, Sophia and Camille. What do you want to see done, or final comments, observations?
Well, just to pick up a little bit on what Ralph said, talking about politics and business, thinking that you can separate them from one another. In an ideal world, you wouldn't want them to really affect one another. I think it's the same thing for health. especially during this pandemic. Everything you see is just all interconnected. When we talk about, for the longest time, right? When we wanted to, I think it's a debate that still that still occurs until now.
Mhm.
Economy or health kind of thing. You see that neither are those two spheres separated. You see all the social factors that affect health, and then at the same way, how important it is to the economy, and at the same time, taking note of that, going back to the UH and Sec Duque, you know it would be, I would just really want um him to, have the courage to assert more public health, and have Filipinos' lives in mind, foremost, because that's what I think, that's the bare minimum that you would want from a top health official during the pandemic, that the priority should be to save Filipinos' lives. And that includes businesses, and having the courage to put your foot down on certain policies and decisions, even if it will surely upset some people, because at the end of the day, wala, it's a health crisis, and everything hinged on how good we can respond to that.
Camille,
Yeah,
final
I
thoughts.
just like I just like to answer yung question kay Ralph na like how do we compare with our ASEAN neighbors and other Asian countries? Like for example, me, I met friends from Vietnam, China, Myanmar, and whenever we talk sa WhatsApp, parang sila, oh, we're out here, nasa mall sila, ganyan. Tapos parang ako, I really I cannot go out. Tapos they send photos, they send videos, so maiingit ka na lang din talaga. But on the other hand, parang naiisip ko rin, is it because of we're under a democracy? Because Vietnam and China are, under a dictatorship, communist party. So madali for them to say, madali for the leaders to say what they want to say, or madali for them to make their citizens do what they want to do as compared to here. So doon ko naiisip. So para iniisip ko, is that a perk? One of the perks of having a communist government or something like that. Pag sobrang na ako, parang bakit andito pa rin tayo Pilipinas? Napapaisip ako. Pero yon, I just can't help but get envious of them kasi parang sila libre testing and everything. And even Cambodia, my friends who are working there, they have a better way of life than we do here. So parang saan tayo nagkulang sa lahat?
Until when
pero Camille, regardless kung dictatorship tayo with our current leaders, parang hindi pa rin naman natin na-achieve yung ano.
Hindi rin talaga.
So, yeah.
Parang sa sobrang dami kong time, naiisip ko na okay ba maging communist government para ma-solve ang pandemic.
So, but because of their track record,
anti-terror law ha. Okay. Kung ano-anong saan napupunta ang ating usapan. Thank you very much for sharing your insights clearly. Health, business, and politics, they're all closely intertwined. And the sooner that our leaders get their act together, the sooner that they claim accountability and ownership that, saving lives, akin yan. I will be responsible for that. The better for everyone. Meanwhile, we wait patiently as we have been doing, and we remain optimistic that hopefully things will become better. If not end of the year, then hopefully by next year. So thank you very much for joining this optimistic discussion. Thank you for listening, watching Newsbreak Chats. I'm Chai Hafalenya. Thank you, Camille. Thank you, Sophia. And thank you, Ralph. Have a good day.